I couldn't even believe the keep trade cut price tag on this player. But it's Brandon Aiyuk. Brandon Aiyuk has been sort of left for dead by the Dynasty community. And he's down to, I couldn't even believe this one. I had to like triple check this one. Brandon Aiyuk is down to wide receiver 67 on keep trade cut. As soon as this offseason happens and Brandon Aiyuk is on another roster, he's going to rise 30 spots on keep trade cut. Redraft ends, but Dynasty is life. What's going on? I'm Theo Gremminger, right here at Dynasty Life on Fantasy Points and Fantasy Points Dynasty YouTube. I want to talk about a couple of moves, sharp ones, the Dynasty managers should be making right now before the start of NFL free agency. And we're well ahead of things here. You're talking about mid-January when I'm recording this. We still have NFL playoff games to play, but the great thing about the NFL playoffs is it keeps Dynasty managers locked in. A lot of Dynasty managers who might be taking some time off are locked in on the NFL action right now. A trade offer comes in their inbox. They're more likely to consider it. So this is a great time of year for under-the-radar Dynasty moves. And there's a number of players who we anticipate seeing their value shift after the start of NFL free agency and some beforehand. There's a number of players where you can cash in. None of these players are going to cost you an exceptional amount, and all of these players could end up paying off big in 2026. And let's start off with a player that a lot of the fantasy community doesn't like, because this player has, in a way, boxed out a player that was much more popular. Kenneth Walker this year was a very popular draft pick at like the end of the third round in redraft, beginning of the fourth round in redraft. In Dynasty, his price tag started to creep up a little bit. People anticipated a massive year with Clint Kubiak. And really what happened was the running back production in Seattle was very strong, but the problem for Kenneth Walker was Zach Charbonnet. Now you have Kenneth Walker entering NFL free agency, and Seattle could choose to let him walk. Now, if there is a deal to be made for Seattle, if Kenneth Walker's like boxed out in the market because there's so many backs that are going to be available this offseason, then there's a chance he could come back and we could see a little bit more of this committee approach. But if he walks like I'm anticipating he does and takes a contract somewhere else, Kenneth Walker, of course, will gain some value. But the player that you can cash in on is Zach Charbonnet. So if you have Zach Charbonnet is absolutely a hold right now in Dynasty. Charbonnet's 25 years old. He was a second-round draft pick in 2023. The rookie season only averaged 6 points per game. Only one touchdown scored there. But in the two seasons that have transpired afterwards, in 2024, Charbonnet averages 11 points per game. He has 9 touchdowns. Then this year took it a step further. On fewer than 200 rush attempts, Zach Charbonnet scored 12 touchdowns. And Charbonnet only had 20 receptions this year. So Walker leaving would open up things for Zach Charbonnet to get back up into that 45 to 50 reception range. And in 2024, he had 42 catches. His reputation coming out of UCLA was a two-way back. So he's a back who has size, can catch enough passes to insulate his scoring numbers, and we can expect another strong year of touchdown production. 21 touchdowns over his last 33 games played. Very, very strong stuff from Zach Charbonnet. Again, Kenneth Walker heading towards free agency. I think a lot of the market is going to shift towards Kenneth Walker having a bounce-back year in 2026. I think there's a lot of optimism with Kenneth Walker bag holders, but I think that the value in Dynasty lies in Zach Charbonnet. And why is that? Because Zach Charbonnet is on a team that is the number one seed in the NFC, has aspirations of winning a Super Bowl this season, and could be leading that backfield next year. Now, will Charbonnet end up being a 300-touch monster next year? Of course not. But could he end up getting into the 250-touch range if Kenneth Walker moves on? I think he could. Even if Seattle brings in another back or drafts another back, Zach Charbonnet, without Kenneth Walker, is most likely going to lead the charge here in Seattle. This coaching staff has continually gone to him in key moments around the goal line. Now you'd have an opportunity for this coaching staff to go to him in a much more expanded role. I think you're talking about, if Kenneth Walker goes, you're talking about 225 carries, and you're talking about 45 to 50 receptions. He has an opportunity to be a top 15 scorer at the running back position next year, and he doesn't cost you that in Dynasty. So hold Zach Charbonnet, and if you have an opportunity to buy, he's a buy as well. Another player that you should be considering buying, Malik Willis. And Malik Willis is going to be one of the more exciting free agents for us to monitor in fantasy football and certainly in Dynasty. And in Dynasty, Malik Willis is very, very interesting. He was a former third-round pick, ends up being a disappointment early on with Tennessee, ends up signing with the Green Bay Packers, and has been terrific for them as their backup quarterback, a player they've really trusted in key situations, who's won NFL games and put up numbers when given the opportunity. This year, we saw what a Malik Willis spike week could look like. 31.5 points in week 17 against Baltimore, a really exciting high-scoring game. And in that one, he had 2 rushing touchdowns to go with a passing touchdown. 288 passing yards in that one, and 2 rushing scores. It's the two-way ability with Malik Willis that gets us very, very excited. And from a dynasty lens, you're talking about a player who's 26 years old. He'll turn 27 this offseason, so he'll be a 27-year-old quarterback next year. And when you look at what's happened with the early declares in the NFL draft, there's going to be a ton of teams that might be looking at a younger bridge quarterback like Malik Willis. And I don't use the word bridge quarterback to insult the guy. Like, bridge quarterback here, I think it gives him an opportunity to get on the field. Malik Willis could be good enough that he buys himself a decent 2 or 3 year window as a starter somewhere. He's ran the 40 in 4.57. He had a 4.57 40 at the combine years ago. Willis is a player that was electric at Liberty, so this might be a long time coming, sort of a late bloomer opportunity. But Malik Willis, I think, is here. Cleveland Browns might choose to not go with Shedeur Sanders. Keep going down the list. Miami might move off of Tua Tagovailoa. And again, there's Minnesota Vikings. If they choose to bring in strong competition against J.J. McCarthy, that would be an interesting spot for Willis. Go down the list a little bit more. The Pittsburgh Steelers are going to need a quarterback, with Aaron Rodgers most likely moving off of Pittsburgh with Mike Tomlin gone there, and the team probably moving into more of a rebuild direction. So really an interesting profile and a player that you can get for not that much. Keeping it going, another player who's going to cost you a little bit more than maybe he would have a year ago. Certainly a player that's gained a lot of value this year, but is still being priced as sort of a role player. It's Alec Pierce. Buy Alec Pierce before the start of free agency. Alec Pierce is 25 years old, and just going back on the draft capital, former second-round pick out of Cincinnati. Indianapolis drafts him. 2024, he averages 10 points per game. This past year, even better. The metrics were terrific for him. The target share goes up. The receiving yards, he goes over 1,000 in only 15 games played. The yards per reception remain truly elite, 21.3, and he has 6 touchdown grabs. Averages 12.2 points per game. Now, there's a bunch of scenarios here where Alec Pierce is going to gain value. It's almost like Alec Pierce is guaranteed to gain some value from where he's being priced in Dynasty right now. Either the Colts are going to figure it out and give him a big contract, with the potential that he could take over as the number one target, the wide receiver one. Certainly the targets will never spike up to a massive amount for him, but the target share and the total targets could move up. And when you combine that with his incredible downfield ability, then Alec Pierce becomes very, very appealing. The Colts could move off of Michael Pittman eventually. The other scenario that's a little bit cleaner is Alec Pierce signs for somebody else. And when you start looking at the teams with a ton of cap space this year, the LA Chargers going and playing with Justin Herbert, that's a wild card one. The Tennessee Titans, Alec Pierce would step in as their wide receiver one. Las Vegas Raiders, ton of cap space. They love speed. Alec Pierce would be the wide receiver one there. Go down the list. Washington Commanders, a lot of cap space. Deebo Samuel is a free agent. Terry McLaurin over the age of 30. Alec Pierce, a chance to be attached with Jaden Daniels. That sounds pretty good to me. New England Patriots, a lot of cap space. There's a ton of teams that we could talk about, and then there'd be the opportunistic landing spots like the Buffalo Bills, where they would have to do some maneuvering. Bills' cap space is not as advantageous, but obviously they need a big-time wide receiver one. So there's a lot of teams out there that are going to value Alec Pierce immensely on this market. And the thing that Alec Pierce has going for him, 25 years old, turns 26 this offseason. So he's extremely appealing to a lot of teams out there on the open market. Not only do they get to add a wide receiver who just had 1,000 receiving yards, but they get to add one who's only going to be 26 this season. Alec Pierce, up and away. He's a player that's going to gain dynasty value right after he signs a big contract, and a player that has a chance to take his game to another notch. 10 points per game in 2024, 12 points per game this season in 2025. How about 15 points per game potential for Alec Pierce next season if he lands well? More targets could happen, or an insulated situation with the opportunity to take over as the wide receiver one in Indianapolis down the line. Alec Pierce has a lot of outs to return value to us in Dynasty, and he's good at football. Keeping this conversation going, another player who I couldn't even believe the keep trade cut price tag on this player, but it's Brandon Aiyuk. Brandon Aiyuk has been sort of left for dead by the Dynasty community, and he's down to, I couldn't even believe this one. I had to triple check this one. Brandon Aiyuk is down to wide receiver 67 on keep trade cut. What are we doing here? Some guys ahead of Brandon Aiyuk on keep trade cut that probably will never enter starting lineups for competitive Dynasty teams. So Brandon Aiyuk is just sort of in this fantasy football purgatory. Looks like there's going to be some sort of a divorce from San Francisco this offseason. Obviously, things didn't go well. Obviously, Brandon Aiyuk and the organization need a split. Is there a chance that they could, get things together and they could make up this offseason? Never say never in the NFL. And if that was the case, and I think that's very unlikely at this point, then Brandon Aiyuk would step into a San Francisco team that just lost George Kittle for most of next season, probably 10 games out for George Kittle, 8 to 10 games, I'm guessing. You've also got Juwan Jennings heading into free agency. Ricky Pearsall can't stay on the field. So there's the out there. But the more likely scenario is Brandon Aiyuk is on someone else's roster next year. As soon as Brandon Aiyuk is on someone else's team next year, as soon as this offseason happens and Brandon Aiyuk is on another roster, he's going to rise 30 spots on keep trade cut. All it takes is the opportunity to get back on an NFL field. And when you're talking about Brandon Aiyuk, talent is not the question. Not the question at all. Brandon Aiyuk averaged 15.6 points per game in his last full season in 2023. He was over 13 points per game in 2022. He had 15 touchdowns combined in those seasons. Only played 7 games in 2024, and then, of course, 0 this year. This is the all-time low for Brandon Aiyuk. And when I talk about free agency, Brandon Aiyuk is going to benefit from a very small free agent class of wide receivers. This is not a super deep free agent class. You talked about Alec Pierce, who we want to buy. Wan'Dale Robinson, also a free agent this offseason. Those are your two sort of young players that are going to get paid. You got Mike Evans, who has a chance to go somewhere chasing a ring. Then you've got guys like Juwan Jennings. So there's the free agent class, Rashid Shaheed. There's some interesting names out there in free agency. But Brandon Aiyuk, a very talented player that multiple NFL teams have tried to acquire over the years. When there was all the trade rumors with Aiyuk, there was all the rumors that Pittsburgh really wanted him, Washington really wanted him. There's going to be a market for Brandon Aiyuk, and there's going to be a market for Brandon Aiyuk that we're not even factoring in. There's going to be some teams just interested to see if they can turn things around with him, if he can get back to, just being excited about being in a new organization and being on the field. As soon as Brandon Aiyuk is moved, that keep trade cut price is going to rise up exponentially. You have a chance to buy a 27-year-old talented wide receiver at dirt cheap prices. Prices at the point where if he doesn't play another NFL down, the price point is not going to burn you enough that you're going to say, ah. But Brandon Aiyuk is being priced right now like he's retired. It's a crazy, crazy price tag for a 27-year-old wide receiver who's basically in hiatus and limbo. By Brandon Aiyuk. Another player that we're going to consider selling, and I think this is a top of the market type sell, but Javonte Williams is coming off of a tremendous season in Dallas. He's regained a ton of dynasty value. Javonte Williams only 26 years old, and I get it. But it's the variables with Javonte Williams, and it's the chance that he's not returning to Dallas next year. And we're seeing a massive, massive value spike. Javonte Williams got up to like running back 15 range on keep trade cut this year. He's still at RB20 on keep trade cut, and he's heading into free agency. Now, Dallas, could they bring Javonte Williams back? Certainly. But when you look at Javonte Williams last year taking the one-year deal in Dallas, I think he's looking for more this offseason. I'm looking to cash in on the RB20 price tag for Javonte Williams before the start of free agency. And if you end up getting Javonte Williams back on Dallas, you've still made profit on a dynasty asset, because unless you drafted Javonte Williams at his absolute dynasty peak, then you might have acquired him for cheap when he was reaching the bottom of the market. If you remember last year or 18 months ago in Denver, you could have had Javonte Williams for just about anything. He was a player that was losing an exceptional amount of value. His value spiked back as soon as he signed with Dallas, and then it rose this year when he was playing very well. But the dynasty marketplace wanted to get away from Javonte last offseason, even after that Dallas signing. He was like a 10th round pick in redraft, and people were betting on Hayden Blue in that situation. Blue ended up being an absolute nothing. That was poor process. But Javonte Williams, RB20, this feels like a great price point to sell him with free agency coming up and the chance that he lands in a less than stellar situation. You could end up looking back on this in 2027 and say, I'm glad I sold Javonte Williams at RB20. And even if he re-signs with Dallas, I don't think that this is a player that's going to ever rise up into that top 12 running back range again. So he's sort of already in that RB2 purgatory range where he's not a truly elite asset, but you can move off of him this offseason, sell the 2025 stats with Javonte Williams, and sell managers on the fact that this guy's going to get a new contract. He will get a new contract, but it might not be as good a situation as Dallas. Keep this conversation going. Let's talk about two players that you can buy right now that are coming off of injuries that could end up bouncing back in a major way in 2026. And both of these players could benefit strongly from the upcoming free agent market. Let's talk about Braelon Allen in New York, and let's talk about Jonathan Brooks in Carolina. So both of these players will be entering their third season in the league. They've had varying successes and really a lot more failures. Braelon Allen this past year saw a huge dynasty value spike. It was a player that Jets beat writers were saying could end up leading the backfield in fantasy production over Breece Hall. Braelon Allen at 21 years old, ton of enthusiasm for him, had an unbelievable training camp. The Jets coaching staff loved him. The beat reporters loved him. And then this year ended up being a disappointment. Breece Hall led the room. Braelon Allen injured, missed most of the season. But now you're going to have Braelon Allen coming back, 22 years old this season, a very young third-year player in the league. And Braelon Allen could benefit from the Jets moving into a little bit more of a running back by committee role with Allen leading the charge if Breece Hall leaves. Even if Breece Hall stays, you're going to get Braelon Allen as a younger asset heading into year 3. Eventually, Braelon Allen's going to end up being a free agent at 23 years old. But Allen has enough juice to his profile that he could lead the Jets' backfield this year, give you some running back utility, and still maintain some value for the future. And if Breece Hall leaves, I predict that Braelon Allen will be the running back leading the backfield, barring something unforeseen like the New York Jets getting a guy like Jeremiah Love in the first round. I think that they could go a little bit more moneyball at the running back position. This coaching staff liked Braelon Allen. They also liked Isaiah Davis, but Braelon Allen was well ahead of him when he was healthy. Braelon Allen could lead this backfield, and if Breece Hall leaves, Allen's value is going to go up. Jonathan Brooks is the interesting one. Jonathan Brooks, an absolute stud at Texas, took over for Bijan Robinson and had a ton of enthusiasm in the dynasty marketplace. When he was drafted by Carolina, there were many that wanted to push him up into RB1 range. Now, Jonathan Brooks, this is a player that when we look at the profile, it screams two-way ability. It screams home run hitting ability. And also you end up with the chance that he could catch a bunch of passes out of the backfield. Brooks coming off of a major injury. Obviously, he missed the entire 2025 season, but there's some optimism among Carolina beat reporters and among former Carolina Panthers. Jonathan Stewart, the former Carolina Panthers running back, he dropped a tweet on X saying Jonathan Brooks is going to come back, essentially buy his jersey. Jonathan Brooks is only 22 years old. He was the 14th pick overall in the second round of the 2024 draft, has incredible pedigree, and he's only played 3 NFL games. Now, next year in Carolina, Rico Dowdle could be gone. So Chuba Hubbard will return to leading the backfield, but Jonathan Brooks being in sort of the RB2 role with a chance to mix in. We saw how effective Rico Dowdle was this year. If there's even a chance that Jonathan Brooks returns to his unbelievable level of play that we saw at Texas, then he should be a player that you're trying to acquire on every single dynasty roster. Jonathan Brooks has obviously lost an exceptional amount of value over the years. And, you know, people trying to get off of injured running backs, that's usually the way that you want to play dynasty. But with Brooks, if we keep a candle burning for a player with this sort of immense talent, it could end up paying off in a major, major way. If Jonathan Brooks turns things around, this could be one of the better comebacks, and he doesn't cost you much at all. With Jonathan Brooks, there's 2 things we want to look at. Rico Dowdle leaving Carolina, and we also want to look at Jonathan Brooks' health updates. I'm Theo Gremminger. Stick with us here at Fantasy Points Dynasty YouTube, and make sure you check out Fantasy Football Daily, School of Scott, and the 2026 NFL Draft podcast that I drop with Brett Whitefield, School of Scott with Scott Barrett. You can find those anywhere you get your pods. We'll see you soon.